Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of BRF Shorts On Us.
Hello.
So our word today is it's two words now, I think, but we've chosen traffic signal.
Yeah, of all things.
Yeah, just like going to the depths of the dictionary, really. All right. Well, the reason we chose this is because we were researching for another word. We did an episode on signal some time ago and found the fascinating history of a traffic signal. And we decided it deserves its own episode. So I'm just going to jump in with the history of the traffic signal. My first venture into this was kind of to try and figure out how do we even come up with the colors? Like, how did it ever get determined as red, green and yellow? And that was just going to be it for eternity. And apparently, the traffic signal color scheme derives from a system that was used by the railway industry since the 1830s. And at this time, the railroad companies sort of developed this lighted means to let train engineers know when to stop or go, with different colors representing different actions, as is still the case today. So they chose the color red for stop because generally I think red has always been associated with caution and danger. So it just felt, I think, arresting enough. And for the other colors, they chose white as the color to go and green as the color for caution. Now, it turns out that the choice of the white light for go sort of put everyone in quite a spin in the middle because there was an incident in 1914 where the red lens fell out of its holder, leaving the white light exposed. And this ended with the train running the stop signal, crashing in front of the train. Terrible tragedy. But obviously also immediately led to everyone needing to change the color. So they changed it so that green would then mean go and red would mean stop. And yellow was chosen just because it was so different from the other two colors. So I think that they realized that distinction was very important. And now, so eventually now how does this kind of come to be transferred to roads? In London in 1865, there was a growing concern. This is very cute. There was a growing concern over the amount of horse-drawn traffic and the danger that it was causing to pedestrians, which is... I guess it was serious back in the day. So pedestrians were having a hard time crossing the road with the number of horses on the road as well. And so a railway manager and an engineer named John Peake Knight came up with a signaling system that could be used with the traffic police, and it had a semaphore method where they used this sort of mechanized arm that could be raised or lowered by police officers, notifying carriages when they should stop or start. And at night, the system used lights similar to the red and green system that the railways were using. In 1920, in Detroit, a policeman named William L. Potts invented a four-way, three-color traffic signal using all the three colors now used in the traffic signals of today. And so Detroit became the first to use red, green and yellow lights to control road traffic. Previously in London, they were only using red and green. Now, slowly, more and more inventors started to come up with different ways of designing road traffic signals. Some adopting the red, yellow, green color scheme, some not. And usually a person needed to push a button or flip a switch in order to change the light. Now, obviously, in a period of time, as it proved extremely cost not effective to have one person just standing there pushing a button.
I like that phrase, cost not effective.
And well, so in the late 1920s, now several automatic systems started to come about. The first one used a simple method of changing lights at specific timed intervals. However, the drawback was that if there was no traffic going in the opposite direction, then you were just standing around there waiting for the light to change, even though there was really no need to. So then there was an inventor named Charles Adler Jr. who had the idea of getting around this problem. And he came up with a signal which would change depending on a car's honk. So a microphone was mounted on a pole at the intersection, and once the vehicle stopped, all they needed to do if there was no traffic was honk their horns. And the light would change. And to keep people from continually honking, to get the light to change, once the light was stripped, it wouldn't change again for another 10 seconds. So it would allow at least one car to get through, but that would be it. Now, I'm assuming that the system that relied so much on multiple cars and drivers honking was not very popular with the people who live nearby and work nearby. And so very quickly was discontinued. And slowly less annoying. Hasn't changed in India though. We still think the system is in existence.
Exactly. I was just going to say that. I think Indians think that it exists.
Missed the memo. And then a gentleman called Henry A. Horn came about, and he developed a slightly less annoying system, which was automatic, but it used metal strips that sensed pressure. So when a car went over it, it would sense the pressure, and it would, based on the number of cars, it would sort of decide whether it needs to go red or green and whether the car could go or not. So obviously they're getting more and more sophisticated. But now what started happening is that you had all of these systems and all of these colors, and presumably a driver from one place got thoroughly confused when he went to another place because... do I stop, start? Do I honk? Do I... what's going on? So in 1935, the Federal Highway Administration created the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. And this document finally set uniform standards and protocols for all traffic signals, road signs, and pavement markings. And
that's what we ignore to this date. That's so interesting. I mean, can you imagine while we were all busy with the pandemic, we hit 100 years with the traffic light.
Yeah,
2020. Yeah. I think we did have more important things to worry about.
Yeah.
So, Ragini, did you know that there's something interestingly different about the traffic signals in Japan?
Ooh.
Okay, so
that's not allowed as per the manual referenced before, which
sorry,
name
the
I've already
Japanese are
forgotten.
rebels. So it's quite interesting. On the face of it, it's just a peculiarity, but the reasoning behind it is quite interesting. So what would usually be a peculiarity alone has an interesting history behind it. So let me explain. A lot of the green lights in Japan have a noticeably blue tinge. And it's not an illusion. Even Japanese road safety guides use distinctively blue green lights. And if you look at it, it's sort of like a teal, like a teal is how I can best describe it. So traffic signals in Japan are actually the result of a mix of linguistics, which is my favorite topic ever. So they're a mix of linguistics, international law, and also a bit of passive aggression from the Japanese government.
What more do you need?
What more do you need? Yeah. So historically in Japan, there was a significant overlap in the language when it comes to the colors green and blue. So blue, which is also known as AO in Japanese, was primarily what was used to describe the spectrum from where cool blue starts to where green ends. So they didn't have a separate word for green for the longest of time. And then it only started being called Midori in
I love that word.
Midori, yeah. In 794, between 794 and 1185. So this is considerably late in the game, isn't it? Yeah. And this continues, this dichotomy between saying Midori and Ao actually continues till present day Japan. For instance, in English, where, if you say someone's green, you mean that they're a novice at something. And in Japanese, they're called Ao Nisai, meaning a blue 2-year-old.
Oh, like a Smurf.
Yeah. Elsewhere, say if you were trying something called Ao Ringo, which is blue apple, but actually what it means is a Granny Smith apple, which is a lime, like a really green apple. So there's so many different things where green and blue, the words for green and blue are used interchangeably, and the only way to distinguish between what you mean is context. So now, how do the traffic lights relate to this? Traffic lights are treated similarly. So in official literature and conversation, the green traffic light is referred to as AO rather than Midori. So even back to when traffic lights were first introduced in Japan, common practice was to make reference to blue lights instead of green lights. And in modern times, the Japanese traffic law requires people seeking a driver's license to pass an eye exam, among other things, and the ability to distinguish between red, yellow, and blue, not red, yellow, and green.
Oh, wow. So I'm also looking at pictures of their signals, and they're beautiful, huh?
They're pretty, aren't they? It's a lovely, I mean, not to say that they don't use green lights. Some of the more modern digital signals do have like a bright green, but you will see some teal lights. Now, how do they reconcile this difference between, what is spoken and what is written down and what is law? So because linguists took issue with the continued use of AO for what was very clearly green, the country's government faced pressure to comply with international traffic customs. And so ultimately, their novel solution for it was that in 1973, the government mandated through a cabinet order that traffic lights use the bluest shade of green possible. So it's still technically
That's a good
green.
lesson in compromise.
Yeah. So it's still technically green, but noticeably blue enough to justifiably continue using the word AO for it. Wow. So, yeah. There's also a portmanteau of the words blue and green called GRU, which is used for Japanese traffic lights as well. Interestingly, just as a little aside in terms of languages and colors, in many languages, colors described in English as blue and green are colexified, which means that they are expressed using a single word or a cover term. So it's not only Japan where multiple colors are condensed into a cover term. There are other cultures that do it as well.
Wow. I would never think that just a little, like a simple confusion around the name of a color could like cause so much conversation around it.
Yeah. And also, it's interesting to note that languages around the world tend to organize their color systems around 4 focal colors: red, green, yellow, and blue. And according to a very popular 1969 study called Basic Color Terms, Their Universality and Evolution, distinct terms for brown, purple, pink, orange, and grey will not emerge in a language until the language has made the distinction between green and blue in its language. So yeah, I find that super interesting. Do you guys know any like equivalent to, someone calling you green but Japanese calling them blue 2-year-old? Let us know.
And we will see you next time with a full-length episode and another word. Thank you for listening in, guys. If you like the episode, review, subscribe, share, tell your friends, and join us again in a week. Bye.
Bye.